Hello everybody, I'm back out in the garage working on the 43 Model L again. Ever since I thought I wrapped up the restoration last year, a couple issues showed up that I needed to take care of. First was a leaking axle seal, which I took care of in a previous episode. Two other main issues came up though. In episode 2, as you may or may not recall if you've seen it, I started up the tractor. This is before I began the restoration. I got it running, but I had to use a Wyco Magneto because the original Edison mag just decided it didn't want to work for me. So for some reason, when I finished up the restoration, the Edison was working fine. I managed to get a first start on this machine on the first pull, and it ran great until I shut it off. And then sometimes it would start, sometimes it wouldn't. I bench tested the Edison, and it just seems like it's got an intermittent short in it somewhere. I can't quite figure it out. I haven't given up yet, but I bought a replacement Magneto, so I need to install that today. The other thing that came up was that the cylinder head I was using apparently was a little bit warped. So when I ran it, as you can see, it blew out the head gasket. The new head gasket I put in there, it pretty much just smoked it. So I took a cylinder head off another donor engine I've got, and I kind of ran it a little bit with one of those that was somewhat flat. This was actually the cylinder head that originally came off the engine. I didn't want to use it because it's got this little broken fin here, and it just bugs me to look at it. But I did confirm that this thing would go ahead and run with a good cylinder head on it. But I didn't have a new head gasket, so I ordered some new head gaskets, and I cleaned up and repainted the flattest cylinder head I've got. So I need to go ahead, install the new head, put the replacement Edison Magneto in there, and then go ahead and fire this thing up. So let's go ahead and take care of those things. Okay, since I have to replace the cylinder head and install a new Magneto, I think the easiest way to do this is take the old head off, put the Magneto on, make sure it's timed correctly, because then I can see where the cylinder's at relative to the compression stroke. And then we'll go ahead and install the new cylinder head. So I'm just going to break these bolts loose, and then I'm going to use my speed handle to take them out. Before we mount the Magneto, we want to make sure that we got nice clean contact here where it mounts the transmission, because otherwise we're not going to make an electrical connection and we're not going to have any spark. So always make sure we get this cleaned off first. Now we're going to go ahead and install the Magneto. This part can be a real pain because sometimes you just don't have a lot of clearance to work with, and it can be difficult to get everything lined up and in place and get the coupler on. So we see right here, we are not installed correct. There we go. Now we've got to get the one single bolt lined up on the bottom of the Magneto. The Wycos take 2 bolts front and back. The old Edison's had a stud on the inboard side and a single bolt on the outboard side. A stubby wrench is very helpful when you're doing this. Otherwise, it's almost easier just to take the wheel off. And you want to make sure that this is lined up good and straight. It's not all cockeyed. Now that coupler will allow a little bit of misalignment, but you don't want to have to rely on that. Okay, Magneto's tightened down. Now it's time to check to see if we're timed correctly. Different Magnetos are going to have different timing methods. But according to the service manual, the way to time an Edison Magneto on one of these is to get it to where the impulse fires off right at top dead center. So pretty straightforward. I'm thinking this should be timed because it was timed correctly for the other Edison, and I'm just swapping Edison for Edison. When I swapped Edison for Wyco, I had to retime, but I'm hoping this is correct. So we're going to back this off a little bit, get the impulse to re-engage, and we'll see exactly where it fires at. And that's popping right at top dead center. I don't know if you heard the impulse go off or not, but we'll do it one more time, and I'll put the little microphone by the Magneto so you can hear it. That is exactly where I need it to be. So next thing I can do is go ahead, I'll get my cylinder head and my head gasket, and I'll put the new cylinder head on. So before I put the head gasket on, I just want to wipe this off really quick, kind of inspect everything, make sure there's not any problems that I need to deal with. I'm a little leery about taking the head on and off this thing too many times. If you remember in whichever episode it was when I did the top end rebuild, I noticed there's a couple little hairline cracks where the head bolts go in, and I just don't want to press my luck too much on them. So I've got everything wiped down, cylinder head's nice and clean. I got a brand new head gasket. I'm going to set that on there, set the cylinder head on, and make sure that the spark plug is pointing toward the intake side. Not that it won't fire if you go the other way, but somebody's going to laugh when they see it. It's a common mistake that gets made, and everybody kind of has a giggle about it. So make sure it's pointed toward the intake side. And we're just going to get our head bolts started in here. The torque spec on these bolts is from 18 to 20 pounds. Because I'm a little paranoid, I'm going to start at 10 and then I'll go up to the final setting from there. And the proper torque actually on these is to start with this bolt and go here and then do a clockwise circle outside. That's at least the manual I saw, so I'm going to go ahead and do it that way. And now we've got to install the spark plug. I got a brand new auto light. You can see the part number on that. It's a 3076. If you can't find them at your parts store, buy them on Amazon. They always seem to have them in stock. And I have set the gap on the spark plug to the proper specs. And unfortunately, we need a big wrench to put the spark plug in. I'm sure somebody makes a 15/16 spark plug socket. I'm also sure that I don't own one. You don't want to go crazy on this, just tight enough it's not going to come off. Next thing I need to do is make sure that I actually have spark, because there's no sense in pulling on this thing all day long if it's not going to fire, and this Edison's going to be as much of a pain as the last one was. For this, I really like this particular style of spark tester. It allows you to kind of dial in, check the strength of the spark, and I've used these cheap little light up ones. I've used these for years, and they work to some degree, but just because you get a light in that thing does not mean that you got a strong enough spark to fire that plug when it's under compression. So let's hook this thing up, and we will see if our Magneto has any spark. Let's see if I get this position so you can actually see it too. Doesn't seem like it wants to cooperate. Well, I'm just going to hold it like this and we'll see what happens. So back it off and let the impulse set. Ooh, nice compression. I don't see any spark. I don't see any spark. That's a problem.
You're not funny. You suck.
Well, folks, change of plans. Look at what I've got on here now. A Waco Magneto. Why do I have a Waco Magneto on this machine? Because my new-to-me Edison is as temperamental and as much of a pain as the one I replaced it with. So we're going to go with the old standby, the Waco. I guess there's a reason why Gravely used them exclusively in the later years of these machines. But since I've got a Waco on there, I have to retime it because the timing on the Waco and the Edison is different. With the Edison, you time it to fire right at top dead center. With the Waco, there's a pair of ignition marks right here on the Magneto, and you want those two marks lined up when the piston is 5/16 of an inch from top dead center. Now, since I don't want to take the cylinder head off, I am going to time this with the head on using my calipers. And it's very important on the compression stroke. If you do this on the exhaust stroke, the machine will not run. So I'm just going to move the piston up, zero my calipers at top dead center. And then I'm going to have to add 0.325, which is 5/16 of an inch. So I want those two ignition marks to line up when the piston is 0.325 from top dead center. So we're going to go ahead and slide this back in. We're going to move the piston up until it is 0.325, or as close as I can get to it. Doesn't have to be perfect. We're using a set of calipers for something that really doesn't require calipers. And that's probably close enough. So I want to get these two ignition marks lined up. And then I want to tighten up this coupler. And I do understand why Gravely went to the square couplers in the later years. They're easier to deal with than these old style, but I think the old style looks nicer. But the new square ones are a whole lot easier to work with than these older square ones. Just a tip, if you take the air cleaner off, this is a whole lot easier to deal with. Took me a while to remember that. I'm not too smart some days. So we're going to tighten this up some more. And then we're going to test to make sure that this is where I need it to be, or at least close to it. Let's bring the piston up. And yeah, our timing marks are lined up. So we are good. Now, just for grins, I do want to test to make sure that I've got spark on this thing. I haven't tested it in a while, but let's just go ahead and make absolutely certain that I'm not going to have any surprises here. I kind of, again, I like this style of spark tester. It gives you a good idea what's going on. And we just need to ground it out. I can ground it out anywhere, really, that I got a good connection. As it turns out, I've got a good enough connection right here on my oil cap, as I found out earlier. As long as this will stay put, which it doesn't want to. Okay. So let's take our multimeter and we'll make sure we can find a really good connection here. Let's see. I should be able to ground it right to that. Yep, I have good continuity there. So ground it out to there. Reset the impulse. Oh, look at that. Nice bright blue flame. I don't know if you could see that. We'll do it again. Try to get a little closer for you. We got to go all the way back enough to reset the impulse. Nice flame or spark. So this one should be working out okay. So I guess the next thing I need to do is we'll go ahead and we'll get this all set up, put the spark plug in, and we'll get her fired up. Okay, the Magneto's on. We've tested it. It's sparking. Got the head on and torqued. We got the spark plug in, all that good stuff. I put gas in it earlier. Not a whole lot, but enough to get it to fire up. Made sure that the float in the carburetor was working. So let's put the choke on. Let's open up the fuel. Let's see if this thing wants to start. These things really don't have a neutral to them, so I like to chalk the wheels when I do this, because they really just kind of like, they don't have a neutral, they just have different degrees of friction. So we're going to back this up until we get to compression. And just because of where I've got the machine, I'm going to pull it from the other side. I usually pull these from the left side. I'm going to pull it from the right side. We'll see if it's going to go. Folks, I apologize for the poor audio during this segment. I forgot that my lapel mic absolutely hates the sound of engines running, and, well, this is what it does. I'll try to remember next time. Oh, needs a little bit more tuning up, but it does seem to run okay. It idles all right. I'm going to have to let it get up to operating temperature and set the fuel mixture a little bit better on it, but seems to be working okay. I didn't see any sign of a head gasket leak anywhere. There's a little bit of steam coming off the head from probably a little bit of grease and oil. Let's see if it wants to fire right back up again. Just to make sure. So we're going to back it off again to compression. Make sure we put the strap on the right direction. That would certainly help. It's not going to fire up if we turn it the wrong way. And let's see if she'll go. Definitely needs a little tuning, but I think she's running good. That's all I got for today on this machine. Gonna button her up and put her away for now. Thank you again for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you on another episode.